Well, hello and welcome to another Map Room briefing where Paul and I sit and discuss the kind of tools that are available to you in your business in the hope that we can help you understand them better and maybe you can use them in your agency and get better outcomes for you and for your business. Now, today it made me think that I'm at that age now where I get the text and the free flu vaccine. And last week I got another note that told me my local GP practice was working in partnership with a hospital in Liverpool, and I can now get a chest examination done. How it's done over the phone, I will never know. But I'm looking forward to a chest examination next week. And it made me think about health checks, and it made me think about the kind of things that maybe we should look at in terms of maintenance for our business. And one of the tools that we have in the Map Armory is something called a financial health check. So I'm hoping that Paul can help us, as I say, understand that today and see whether that's something that would be of use to you as the business owner for you and your business. So Paul, for anybody watching, help us understand what is a financial health check.
It's two things, really. So I often talk about the fact that financial performance, which is what most business owners are striving for when they're speaking to us, is better financial performance comes from doing the right things well over a period of time. And that's what we've coined as finance maturity. So in my view, financial performance is as a result of ongoing, consistent financial maturity. If you're looking at the right things in the right way over a period of time and having accountability and having a cadence of meetings and the right reports, etc., you've got more chance of achieving sustainable financial performance. So the financial health check basically tries to look at both of those two angles, maturity and performance. The reality is that for a lot of small businesses, keeping their records up to date and accurate is a challenge and often not done very well. The beauty of cloud accounting and why I fell in love with running an accounting firm and decided to run my own firm back in 2013 was that I always say that although we'd love to be in our clients' businesses every day, that's impossible, but we can be in their finances every day. So cloud accounting really gave us the keys to our clients' finances in real time, anywhere with an internet connection, and we can both be dialed into the same data at the same time from anywhere. However, as we know, technology is only a tool. And the reality is, as much as some of these accounting software make out that for only £30 a month you can manage all your finances, you still need somebody who knows what they're doing to make sure that data is appropriate. Now, the challenge for a lot of small business owners is they are not finance people. They're not financially trained. They don't necessarily know what they need to look for or what good looks like. And then they're sort of therefore at the mercy of their bookkeeper, their accountant, their finance staff, etc. So the purpose of the financial health check is for us to take that seat, lift up on it, as I say, and be able to basically do an assessment of their cloud accounting system and report back to the business owner and explain to them where we think the strengths or weaknesses are of their finance function and what they're doing well and maybe what they're not doing, and then also ideally the financial performance. But in most occasions, we find it's challenging to be able to assess the financial performance because the data is not in a position where we can credibly reflect back to them on the financial performance of the business.
So help me understand it a little better, and then hopefully anybody watching, is this health check done at arm's length? When you say we have access to their systems. Now, I know obviously we do this for existing clients that, yes, we would have already into their Xero in most cases. But also I'm aware that we often will do this for a non-MAP client to help them understand what either a increase in their financial confidence, financial maturity could do, or potentially even a move to MAP away from a more traditional accounting practice. But help me understand, is it something that, to use your phrase, our mechanics go under the bonnet, do some analysis and just send report, or is the health check done in partnership, in liaison with the business?
So the first step is getting access to the accounting system. So we need the business to be comfortable with giving us that access. Sometimes they don't like the idea of an accountant's domain being shown as one of the users. So they can deal with that by different means, with different email addresses, etc. That's fine. And we can do a non-disclosure agreement. Once we've got access, then that's when we start our work, and we've got a process that we work through to be able to basically provide an assessment. So a typical red, amber, green system across a number of areas in regards to both of those things. So the financial maturity, how well they're managing their finances, and then secondly, the performance, how we think they're performing, if we think we can credibly ascertain that from the data in their accounting system. As I say, the reality for a lot of businesses is that they're quite embarrassed, and part of the reason they're reaching out is because they don't think their accounting system would tell us the real story of how they're performing. So once we've done that, we do build a report. But then when the partnering aspect comes in, is we jump on a meeting, we present it to them in an interactive way. So we say, look, this is what we think is happening. This is how we think you're managing your finances. Is this right? And they might say, oh no, we manage that offline. We use a spreadsheet for that thing, or we use another tool to manage. We might think, looks like you're not managing expenses in Xero. And I'll say, oh no, we're managing this other application. And then we'll discuss the pros and cons of maybe moving that feature into Xero, et cetera, et cetera. So our job is not to sell Xero or to sell any other cloud accounting system. It's just for us to give our assessment of what we think is happening, and then open a conversation with the client to see whether there are efficiencies in the way that they are managing the finances that can be gained, but also how can we fundamentally improve the financial performance of the business as well.
Okay, we'll maybe come on to performance, but let me understand a little bit more about the concept of financial maturity, or what they're doing. If you go back to your original sort of concept of going under the bonnet, we all have vehicles that we stick into an annual service, and these days someone plugs some kind of USB stick in or whatever it is and runs some kind of diagnostic. And I don't know the first thing about engines. I'm assuming there's lots of business owners out there that in reality don't know the first thing about finance. So they've got an accounting system for compliance purposes. Let's just start there. And they may just be using statutory accounts at the minute. So is this about helping also them understand what makes up a financial system and accounting system? And is it about education, or is it about just saying, look, this is not working? Your oil pressure is too low. We will put oil in the engine. Or is it helping that person understand how they can maintain that oil pressure at the right level?
We love it when they want to understand. So if they're really engaged and they actually want to understand enough of the detail, we're not training any business owner on how to become an accountant. That's a waste of time. And you can't do that in a short period of time. It takes years of training, and they would probably rather do much more exciting things with their lives. But for me, finance is ultimately the translation of what's happening in a business. So we want to help a business owner to be able to use finance as a tool to explain what's happening in their business, as opposed to what happens in a lot of cases for small businesses is operations and finance talk two different languages. Yeah. And in some cases, one thinks performance is really positive and the other one thinks performance is really negative, and they're not. So when finance is done properly, operations and finance should be speaking not just the same language, but the same outcomes as well about the performance of that business. And what happens in reality is the cloud accounting systems are treated more like cloud bookkeeping systems. Yeah. So they're used to raise invoices, manage expenses, and reconcile the bank. In some cases, that's not even done well. But I think that's how many business owners and many businesses interpret their low-cost SaaS cloud accounting system, which is a shame, because in reality, these cloud accounting systems have put millions and sometimes billions of pounds into developing actually very powerful accounting systems that small businesses never would have been able to afford a couple of decades ago. And now you can get it for, £50 a month, whatever it is. So these accounting systems are capable of doing a lot more and providing really useful insights if they're used properly.
It's interesting you said the point there about sort of the link between ops and finance, and without wishing to carry on too far with the car analogy, it was once described to me that someone said, the operations department of the business is like the engine. It drives the business, it keeps the business turning over, literally. But the finance team was like the performance tuning. The finance team was like the sports team that come in and go, this is how you make your engine perform better. This is how you get better fuel economy. This is how you get more horsepower. So that's the interesting analogy for people to understand that, it's not, we're not saying that finance is the be all and end all. We're saying it's the way to better understand your operations. It's a better way to maybe tweak and refine the operations. And hopefully what we're saying is, as part of this financial health check, we will help you. Is it understand the link better? Is it understand where your issues are?
I think it's both. I think the issues often come out with just the way that the finances are being managed. So, look, we're struggling to give you insights on performance because the data just isn't being managed properly. And we can come on to what that means and what some of those common weaknesses are that we find. But then when we do interpret the data and they are good accounting records, then we can start to explain the performance and see whether that resonates with what they were expecting or whether there's any surprises. And sometimes just the peace of mind of just knowing that they're doing things well, because, as I say, they don't really know what good looks like or whether the person they've got managing it is doing a good job. They just know more than they do as the business owner. So it's basically just shining a light on that person internally, or whoever's managing the finances, and saying, is this being managed in the most efficient way? And is it giving a true reflection of what's happening inside your business? And there's some quite quick and easy ways for us to know whether that's the case.
So help us understand the scope then, Paul. So if somebody says, look, I'm interested in, maybe now, start of 2026, I'm interested in doing a financial health check on my business. I can't get the analogies out of my head now, the winter service, get your car ready for winter and all of that stuff. But what is the scope? Where does the health check start and where does it stop?
It starts by looking at the bookkeeping element. So as I say, I like to look at the cloud accounting systems now as it's a bookkeeping system and it can be an accounting system. So the bookkeeping elements will look at things like, are all your bank feeds set up? Many, many years ago now, the feature was opened up in many of these cloud account systems that you could see your bank transactions. It's just become second nature now to us. But when I started my career, it was a client sending in paper bank statements once a month. So are the bank feeds working for all accounts and feeding into your accounting system? Are expenses being claimed properly? Is the bank being reconciled? Are your fixed assets being registered? Is VAT being reclaimed properly? Are you managing your P&L properly, your P&L reporting properly? So a lot of that is just good basic governance in regards to bookkeeping. And then the next level of it is, from an accounting reporting perspective, can we actually understand the financial performance, P&L, financial position, balance sheet of this business and the cash flow? So that's when we'll start to look at the reports that we can see are being generated and ask whether they are appropriate for the type of business that we're looking at. We specialize in agencies. We know the difference between the reporting of a web development business versus an SEO. They're both under the banner of agencies, but they're very different agencies in many different ways. So we know the sorts of things that if we were running a business like that, what would we hope to see? Are those reports set up and are they given an accurate output of the information? And often the difference between good bookkeeping and good accounting is the month-end process and how that's managed.
In terms of the process that the business goes through to close that period, reconcile what they've spent, reconcile what they've earned, that's, I think, one of the challenges that you often see in any small business, but very much of there's lots of moving parts in agencies. I mean, I know from my own time in agencies, work in progress at month end was always a difficult one. And today's not about revenue recognition. Maybe that's one for another day, Paul, that we'll put in the calendar to help people understand that better. You mentioned there, obviously, with our knowledge and expertise of the agency space, there are a number of, let's say, issues or challenges or normal procedures or best practice that we would see. Without going into any confidential details, help us understand what are some of the normal issues you would expect to see or come out of a financial health check.
So some of the things I said before, so just quickly to go back over them. So the bank feed's not being set up properly. So you're having to manually reconcile the bank, basically, and upload bank transactions. Not managing expenses through Xero. So you're using another system, so your expenses are not visible easily and quickly within Xero, and Xero allows you to do it on your phone. So that makes it easier for employees. Not recovering the appropriate VAT. So you're recovering VAT. I've seen agencies that have set up rules to always recover, because the strength and danger of automation is makes life easier, but it can also mean that you are too gung-ho in trying to streamline things. So you're claiming VAT on things that you definitely shouldn't be claiming VAT on, or which means obviously you're at risk from HMRC inquiry, or you're missing out on VAT recovery that you could be making. Or it could be that, 1 month software subscription gets posted to IT, the next month advertising, and it just makes reporting in cloud accounting systems is often undermined at the click of a button. But actually, if you do the record keeping right, it's the click of a button. But garbage in, garbage out. So the only way that report's going to be meaningful is if some of this fundamental accounting entries are done right in the first place. Registering fixed assets is the other one. We see fixed assets being posted to P&L. Bought a laptop and it's written off to IT costs. That should be a fixed asset that sits on the balance sheet. Then the next stage is make sure it's depreciated. So you're not ignoring the cost of it, but you're accounting for it appropriately over a period of time.
Just explain that, Paul, because these are one of the things, isn't it, where we talk a lot and we get asked a lot about valuations, and we get asked a lot about what makes agency X more valuable than agency Y when they appear to be the same. And we often say this about people believe that value is just a multiple of profit, and in the main it is. But those assets then that have been maybe hidden or diluted that aren't set on your balance sheet. So the purpose of the asset register, in my experience, also just helps you see that when lots of people go for growth and lots of agencies, because it's a service-based model, are driven by headcount, suddenly, I don't know what an Apple Map Pro is these days, $2,500, $3,000. So suddenly 20 of those that are not sat as an asset, but have just been expensed through the business, seems a way of just throwing money out the window to me.
There's a number of reasons why that is problematic. One is, as you say, you're undervaluing the business. Secondly, it's really hard to do retrospectively, at the time of a due diligence or whatever it might be, to then redo all your accounting for a number of years and find all these laptops and value them and update your accounts with Companies House and HMRC and internally is really stressful. And then thirdly, it doesn't reflect very well on your maturity as a business that you weren't doing the accounting properly, and that raises red flags about where else there are operational weaknesses in the business.
So that maybe comes to the next point, which is the output of the financial health check. So there's areas that we know are common across the agency style business, and we can look at those. And we can see things like this, and we can maybe help show people that best practice. If you do buy another PC, another device, or whatever it is, then this is how you register at the time of doing it. But help us understand the output then. So the report does what, Paul? It identifies areas of, let's just use the word weakness, or areas for possible improvement. Does it just say, here is our diagnostic report? Or does it say, here's our diagnostic report, and let's just use this same example. We've noticed you've bought all these devices, but you're not registering them as assets. We're now going to show you a process to help you do that. What is the output? If I buy the health check, what do I get?
So we used to just provide a summary report, which basically just explained the problems. And now what we do is provide an accompanying schedule that basically then details out what they are. So rather than just say, you've got 8 fixed assets that have not been registered and we recommend you register them, we then have a separate schedule to say, here's all the assets, the dates that you bought them, the descriptions. And then when we jump on the call to explain it to them, we will walk them through, partly customized ourselves, walking through how to do that in Xero, but also send them links to some of Xero's knowledge base about how to do that themselves as well. So the idea that we're trying to get to is, like you said, if this business decides, I just want someone to fix all this problem for me and take it away, and not only fix it once, but put in the right systems going forward to make this more mature, great. We can have a conversation and we can talk about what working with MAP would look like. But fundamentally, what we don't want is just no action. What we want, if they're not going to work with MAP, they've got all the tools and all the identified all the areas about what needs to be fixed and how it needs to be fixed.
I think that comes back to the point you said earlier, Paul, which is also understanding just what this cloud accounting and what a proactive relationship your accountant can do for your business.
Yeah.
There are lots of owners. I've been one myself, early days where I just thought the accountant's role was to, I've often said this before, keep me legal, all the things that I need to do. But actually, when you start to understand how that fine tuning of that engine can make a difference, I think it really makes you understand what can be done. So what we're saying here is that the health check can help you maybe understand what you're missing out of. That's maybe a phrase that's a fair thing to say. This is what you could be doing. This is how you could get your financial maturity better.
Yeah.
This is also how you can build your financial confidence, because we're going to show you how you can do it. And as you're saying, it might be just the thing that nobody appreciates, that those kind of add-on and that fine-tuning is available from their accountant because they've been sat using a traditional, shall we say, wide-ranging accountant who specialises in the function of accountability and not specialises in, in our case, agency performance.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but the reality is that most accounting businesses, and this is why I was passionate about setting up that, they do operate at an arm's length and they are there to keep you compliant at year end. It's very unusual for an accountancy firm to help to talk to you about how do you make that year end process smoother by getting things right at source. But it's not just about making your end smoother. It's about actually, if you do that and get things right at source, you actually now have access to more meaningful, useful information for you to run your business properly. So another part of the health check is the why as well. So we're talking about something mundane like registering fixed assets. Why? What does that mean? How does that now enable you to run more useful reporting? And what is the more useful reporting? We're giving recommendations on what KPIs you should be looking at in an agency and what changes you need to make to be able to run that information, and then what output you'd expect from those KPIs. What is a good client concentration, revenue per head, cash conversion cycle, etc., etc. But it's walking before you can run, because the reality is most agencies have not got the data for us to talk about the outputs of those KPIs, because they need to get those essentials in place first.
So what you're saying there is that the part of the output is helping somebody understand the measurement that they could achieve for their business, how they could better measure their performance. And some of that will require input from the internal finance team, the business owner, whoever does the work at the minute. Help me understand, what's the follow-up? So we give a health check that says, so this is where you could get so much more performance-driven data to help you manage your agency better. But going back on your point that they're starting behind the eight ball, they haven't got the data collection in right now to achieve this, and there needs to maybe be some work done on that. Let's just use, as you said earlier, the month-end process, the month-end account closing process. What's the follow-up? How do we speak to them 3 months, 6 months, 12 months later to say, how have you got on with that? Are you now in a position where maybe you want to look at these things? Or is it, like lots of consultants, here's your report, there's the book, go away and read it, and good luck?
Probably don't follow up as well as we should, like many businesses. If at that point they decide that they are interested in us fixing that problem and providing a service ongoing, then obviously we will arrange a separate meeting and build a proposal. We always build a proposal together to show them what that solution looks like. And then from there, they can make an informed decision. No thanks, that's too expensive. Let us do that ourselves, no problem. Or yes, please, let's fix this problem and get on with it. Hopefully what they don't do is take no action.
Yeah.
But part of our assessment as well is to look at the resources in regards to the finance function. So, are some of the weaknesses inevitable because of the lack of resources or lack of skills that you've got available? Or do you just need some tweaks? If you're already spending money on good people and good resources, but it's just our expertise of agencies and zeros that has helped us to spot sort of the cream on top, if you like, the exceptions, then can we help those people to, benefit from the knowledge that we've got?
Okay. Obviously, as I said at the outset, this is one of the briefings, which obviously is not the same as the episodes we do, and we are trying to keep them brief. So I'm going to bring this one to a halt, and I'm going to say, if somebody, as my usual phrase has resonated with this, Paul, if somebody says, do you know what? Either I want to understand whether or not my finance function is operating as I think it is, or I'm wondering whether I can get more from my finance function, or even, heck, I don't even have a finance function. Let's start to understand with this cloud accounting system I've got, what can I do with it, and therefore build. I think lots of people will be aiming for growth in 2026, but not then have the structure and the systems and the processes to support that growth, which again is probably another briefing for another day. How does somebody find the health check? How does somebody get access to this resource?
Just reach out to me. Just reach out to me on email or on LinkedIn, and as long as they're happy for us to, look into their accounting system, then we can provide some value. What I would say is that if you're watching this and you think everything's honky-dory, don't resonate with any of these problems, we have fantastic reporting delivered on time and we understand it, brilliant, we can then give an assessment of the performance. We can always jump that first step and talk about the outputs of that reporting and how financially fit your agency is, if you like, what the actual financial performance is. So, most are in one of those two camps. If you're fortunate enough to already be very financially mature and have the good systems and processes in place, let us give some insight on how we think you're performing based on our knowledge of other businesses in similar industries. Or if you're right at the other end of the spectrum and you just, I know it's a mess, or I've got no idea, then we can come in and give some value about how to improve the maturity in the processes.
Okay, excellent. I think that's been really useful. As I say, I hope it helps people understand that whether they are a client or not, there are tools that are there to help them get more from the business. And as I said at the outset, that these are there to design to get better outcomes for you and for your business. So hopefully that was of useful, and we will see you back again in the Mac Room for another briefing soon. Cheers, Paul. Thanks.
Thank you.